our main conversation of this episode. I am super excited about our latest installment of Black Brilliance Conversations. As you know, our Black Brilliance Conversations are discussions that we are having with leaders across different industries, movers and shakers, and everybody who you want to hear from. Today, we have a special guest, a super illuminary. We've had some political figures on before, but today we've got someone super duper special that I'm very excited to talk to. I'm just gonna, without further ado, I mean, there are a lot of big names that come out of Texas, a lot of big figures that come out of Texas, but none more recognizable, none more significant, none more important than the guy I've got on the podcast today. We've got the mayor of Houston, y'all. Sylvester Turner is in the building. Sylvester Turner is in the building and on the couch. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, brother Coleman. Thanks for having me
Thank
today,
you for
man.
being on, man. Before we get started, there was an interesting story. I don't know if your office looked, but if they did, they would have found out. You wrote me it wasn't a proclamation, but it was a letter of acknowledgement and celebration in 2018 because I did a community service project in your city. It was after Hurricane Harvey. I had still been helping
Okay.
people, young men, particularly single men who had not been able to access aid. I did an event down there as part of the Black Superhero Project, and I still have the letter. It's like literally framed on my wall. It's something that I have.
I was honored to write it,
I,
man. And look,
I,
thank you for being in the
I
city.
appreciate that. Let's go on and get started, man.
Okay.
This is a conversation that I wanted to have with a number of different Black mayors in particular because people don't understand the significance sometimes of how a mayor really sets the tone for their city.
Hmm.
We're on the heels of everything that happened in Memphis with Tyree Nichols, which of course raises the conversation about law enforcement, community, what it is to be a leader in communities of color. And I just wanted to get your reaction, just in general, to what that was. Not the political reaction, but the reaction as a Black man who leads a city with a significant Black population. I
I
wanted to get your reaction to that.
and I would tell you when I saw the video, it was shocking and it was disturbing. Just as a black man, it was shocking and disturbing. Um, and to be directly candid with you, for black police officers to be
Yeah.
involved, it was very, very disappointing. And it said to me, you know, um, when you devalue life, or if you don't like yourself in many ways, um, then you disrespect and devalue the lives of others, even sometimes the people that look just like yourself. So it was shocking. It was disturbing, and it makes no sense.
You have had to manage a very challenging conversation about law enforcement, about
Hmm.
policing, about police
Right,
violence in your city.
right,
You've also had to deal with the challenge of, I think it was in 2019 and 2020, you all saw the murder rate go up. You guys have since brought it down. You've
right.
been a part of the conversation about allocating more money in general to the police budget, but in specific ways, you guys have been at the center of that. And it's been a discussion. And so I guess my thing is, as you've approached these conversations, as you've approached these challenges, what has been your guiding, like, what's your North Star? What's your guiding ideology about how you move in that direction?
Well, number one, and you are right, I've had to deal with it on both ends.
Right.
When there's been police violence against citizens, I've had to deal with that. And of course, George Floyd come out of city of Houston, CUNY Homes, right here in the city of Houston. Many of his family members still live here. And so we had put forth a task force on police reforms. that came back quickly with 104 recommendations. We've implemented about 90, 91 of them already. So we don't do chokeholds, and you don't just be shooting at vehicles, and you do have a duty and an obligation to respond. And then we put forth these online boards that people can actually see, and that's interactive. File a complaint. You don't have to go to the police station. You can file a complaint, for example, with the NAACP or at the LGBT office. So we want to make it accessible and make things transparent. And then at the same time, I've had to be on the other end where there's violence against other people in the community, not involving the police, just people shooting and
Yeah.
killing one another. So I have to deal with that. My North Star for me, Brother Coleman, is I call a ball and a strike a strike.
Mm.
Okay. And I call it as I see it. And it's important for us to be to hold each one accountable and not hide anything from people,
Yeah.
not try to delay anything, and that's the way I look at it. I mean, look, I grew up in the hood. I still live in the same hood in which I was born and reared. Okay, so but I call a ball and a strike, and that's the way I look at it. That's where I see
So
it.
one thing that I think your city has, for better or for worse, particularly in the past 10 years, Houston was always a sort of hot spot in the hip hop community. But in
Hmm.
the past couple of years, Houston has exploded in terms of the amount of attention and interest that it gets as a city from the hip hop community. You got Drake coming down there. That boy may have a house there. I don't know. He's down
Yeah,
there all the
he's still quite a bit. Yeah,
he's out there. You have obviously Jay Prince has been a person who's a personality who's been in that
right.
space for a while, and then of course you
Prince
have
and his family.
and of course you have your Slim Thugs, you have your UGK, you have your Bun B, all of those
Power.
people, right? You have all of those
Right,
people, in addition to of
right.
course your legends like Scarface, Willie D. It goes on.
All of them. All of them.
Do you think that the new influx of sort of attention around Houston, its reputation. Do you think that it gives Houston, or gives outsiders an impression of your city that you're not necessarily comfortable with? Or are you kind of sort of like not worried about it? Do you think that that has any impact in terms of how outsiders view your city?
No, look, I grew up with many of these folks. Slim Thug and I, for example, come out of the same community. Acres Home, north side of Fofo. Um, I was the first mayor to bring the city home to meet with me about 25 of them
Mhm.
sitting around the table saying, help me to move this city forward. And they came forth with a lot of good ideas. I asked for their direct involvement, their direct participation. We are a very diverse city, and not just in terms of ethnicity, but in terms of culture, in terms of music, and where people come from. And they play a vital role in our city. So I don't have a problem with that. Um, it is important. You don't want people hurt. You don't want people committing violence and anything of that nature. But they can reach some folks that I can't reach.
Yeah,
And people will listen to them in many ways before they listen to me. And so it's important from my vantage point to bring them in, to integrate them in terms of where their city is, where their city is going, and to make sure that we reach every segment within our city because everybody is important. Everybody can contribute, and we are not the same
I think
on so many different levels.
I think
So no, I'm cool with that.
I think you raise an interesting point when you start talking about the fact that they can reach people that you can't.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because there's another conversation that I'm having with you and other black elected officials about particularly black male engagement in the civic process. There is a very very valid There's a very
Mhm.
valid sentiment among black men, particularly heterosexual black men, that, in large part, they don't feel seen at the national level, in democratic politics, at the national level. And because of the way that politics are sold to us, in terms of our mindset doesn't always appreciate that all politics are local. And our mindset does not always appreciate the fact that when you don't participate in state and local elections, you do yourself a disservice, because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. That trickle down for the national discourse can affect engagement and participation at the local level. I've seen some of the numbers out of the city of Houston, but when
Mhm.
you talk about that sort of engagement and being able to use other people as surrogates or as people who will help get your message out, how do you approach that conversation about voting? Because there are a lot of black men who feel like, look, the current agendas of either party don't speak to me. They don't necessarily do anything for me. So you're the mayor in their city. What's your conversation with them?
Well, my conversation with them is there's a place for black men, if we're going to just focus right now on that group at the table. I'm a brother sitting at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, no one is just going to um, uh, just wait on people to come. It's important for me as the mayor of this city to reach out to other brothers and to invite them and to seek their input and their participation. And I do that all the time. Some of my directors, for example, are brothers, black men, okay? And people that I put on boards and commissions are black men. My brother's keeper that I invest in is geared towards men of color and young men of color, and I encourage them to participate at every level. So I think, Charles, me be a little bit more specific when it comes to economic
Yeah.
empowerment. Okay, you want to make sure that you are supporting these entrepreneurs and encouraging people to be entrepreneurs. You want to make sure that you provide brothers with the workforce experiences that they need to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming into our city. It's important for me not to just stay here at City Hall, but to go out in the community, talk to them, have real talk conversations with
Yeah.
them. That's important. That's one of the reasons why I've elected to stay right in the neighborhood that I was born and reared, so that they can see examples that you can come through and still navigate and go to the next level. So I can't speak in a sense to what's happening on the national level,
Sure. Well, you could.
but I
You could.
well I
I
could,
understand
but
you may
what I'm
not. I understand you may not want to, or you may choose not to, but you could. But I'm.
well, but it is important to encourage black men, okay, to get engaged, and it's important for us to talk directly to them, okay, not over them, not around them, not miss them, but to talk directly to them,
And I think that that's.
and even in our
And
politics.
I think that that's a big part of what is not happening, that makes people not engage, is that no one or very few people feel like they're being spoken to. I think that there is a sense that they may be spoken about, they may be spoken around, or they may be spoken at, but they're not talked to as part of the conversation. And I think that what you're talking about from an engagement standpoint is very important, because it is the linchpin that is going to make the connection for people to feel like, number one, not only am I seen, but I actually have a place in this space. So you've been mayor for, like you said, 8 years now.
Going to my eighth year. This
But
is my final year.
2023, you've had an opportunity to see a lot of different things in Houston. A lot of things change, a lot of things happen, a lot of things take
Right.
place. And you've also learned a lot of lessons. Like nobody comes on the job knowing everything about what it is to be mayor. I have a couple questions about that. Number one, but these are kind of sort of rapid fire. Do you have any regret? Do
Okay.
you have any regrets?
No,
Okay.
I've enjoyed every bit of it, the good and the bad and the ugly.
Number two, what's been your biggest lesson over the
That
8 years
what
you've been mayor? What's been your biggest lesson?
that what you can't prevent or foresee, you simply have to learn to manage.
That's probably
Because stuff will come from every direction. And there are a lot of things that will happen you couldn't stop, you couldn't prevent, you couldn't foresee. But when it does happen on your watch, you have to manage it.
no one is perfect, and I think no one expects perfection. But given everything that you've learned and done throughout your tenure, what's the one thing in 2023 that you want to end right on, that you feel like, you know what, we can really do that a little bit better, and I want to make sure that I go out and don't leave this office without improving this thing? What is that?
I've said to my team, my executive team, 2023 is the year of implementation, getting it done. It's not trying to come up with a lot of new stuff.
Okay, the wheel is
It's
already
about,
built.
for example, 3 weeks ago, we cut the ribbon on this A-Leaf multi neighborhood center. They've been waiting on it for some 27 years,
Mm.
and cut the ribbon. It will transform that community. That was 3 weeks ago. This past Saturday, we cut the ribbon on the Sunnyside neighborhood multi-service and health center. This black community, they've been waiting on it for a long, long time. Cut the ribbon, doors are open. We're going to significantly enhance 22 neighborhood parks, not those signature parks in our city, but parks in these communities, 22 of them in this year alone. I put together what we call complete communities. I said when I came in as mayor 8 years ago, I didn't want to be the mayor of two cities in one, have and have nots. So we've been investing resources into these communities. So yeah, it's not just about putting money in police. It's about also focusing in a laser way these communities that have been underserved and under-resourced, putting money in there. We want to get those projects in those communities done. And in some cases, it won't be completed, but we will have planted the seed for its growth and development. So 2023 for me is the year of execution and implementation, getting it done before I leave, so people can see in a very visual way
Mm-hmm.
what we have been talking about for the last several years. That's important for me.
And this is a follow up to, you mentioned it and it kind of popped in my head. The conversation about police funding is one that has generated a lot of discussion. It's not so much a discussion now as it was in the wake of George Floyd's death.
Right,
The conversation
right.
about funding the police was a much bigger discussion. But again, Houston having increased its budget in response to a surge in violent crime was at the forefront of the conversation. I was always one who said everything is about context. So, on one hand, you could say Houston increased its budget for policing, but on the other hand, you have to understand where that money went and how that money was allocated. Can you talk a little bit about that context so that people on the right don't say, "Oh, it's all about how much money we give to policing," and then people on the left also don't say, "Oh, all they want to do is throw money at police and make that the solution to the problem." Can you add some context to how
Yeah,
that money
because
was
it's a
allocated?
yeah, because it's a much bigger context. When I came in as mayor 7.5 years ago, for example, we needed more police in the city of Houston. We had about 5,100 police officers covering 640 square miles. In comparison, for example, Chicago has about 12,000 covering 275 miles. So we needed more. And then the reality is that in the context of us funding more, the police department is a part of an overall initiative that I put in place called One Safe Houston. It's not just about boots on the ground overtime for police. It's about the utilization of technology. It's about the gun buyback program. And the city of Houston has had the biggest one-day gun buyback program in the country. So it's about getting these guns off the
But are
street.
those
It's
effective
about
though? Are gun buyback programs really effective?
you have to view it in terms of all of the tools. Standing alone, it's not as effective. But when you combine all of the tools, technology, gun buybacks, my reentry program, when people come out of prison or coming back into the streets, they need housing and they need
Yeah.
employment. And so we're investing dollars in the reentry program. That's a part of it. Crisis intervention. The police are having to respond to way too many calls when they're not the best source for a person that's in crisis. Mental behavioral health issues, substance abuse,
Right.
homelessness. So we are putting a lot of money into those areas and redirecting the calls away from police to the services and the people who can best handle their crisis. Domestic abuse and violence. We're investing more money in those areas. So it's a holistic approach. So yes, more money in police. But at the same time, my Higher Houston Youth program that focuses on young folk from the ages of 16 to 24, many of them males, many of them black males, providing summer jobs, paid jobs for them this summer in 2023. The goal is to provide 20,000 paid summer internship jobs for that group between the ages of 16 to 24. When I came into office, Brother Coleman, we were offering 450 jobs. 2023 will be 20,000.
Mm.
And then our community messages program. There are a lot of other community programs that we're investing in. And then I mentioned to you complete communities, identifying 10 neighborhoods in our city that have been underserved and under-resourced for decades, like the one I grew up in. So it's the holistic approach. So yes, more funding in police, but it takes police and the community working together to make a very safe city.
Brother Turner, we've had an amazing conversation, and I really do appreciate your time. But I do have one last question.
Okay. All right.
You're in a city where the voice of that city is very different, or can be very different than some of the larger voices in your state that represent your state on a larger level,
All right.
on a statewide level and on a national level. How do you manage that in terms of having conversations with people who politically, in terms of your ideology, you may not be aligned with? You may not be aligned with the Ted Cruz. You may not be aligned all the time with the Governor Abbott. How do you manage that and those relationships to the betterment of your city?
That has been tough. That's probably been the most challenging set of circumstances that I've faced since I've been mayor, because we've not had a great deal of support from the state, and sometimes they've been more of a hindrance or imposed stumbling blocks than a bridge, and at times same thing on the national level. Um, but what I've said to my team, and this is the way I've operated my entire life, I can sit there complaining, or I can find ways to get around that stump. And my daddy used to tell this
Or
story
you
about,
could put the pause on them. You could do that too.
well, yeah, but when people are in need, let me put it this way: when people in your city or in the community are in need, and they come to you, they are looking for you to meet their need.
Mhm.
You can spend all your time saying, if we had a different governor or we had a different legislature. Brother Coleman, they don't want to hear that.
That's a fact.
When people are
That's a
hurting
fact.
and when people are in need and they come into you, and you, in this case, I'm the mayor, they're expecting me to find a way to meet their need. And and like I told my team, let's find a way. Let's be creative. Let's be innovative. Let's try to make this happen. I can explain to them later about the value of voting and participating, but it's right now it's important for us to find a way to meet their need. If we meet their need, then we can go back to them and say, I could have done this more, better, or sooner if I had different players at another level. And that's what I've learned in my time in public service, when folk come to you, don't send them away. Don't say I can't do anything. Or if you all had voted, or if you all had voted
Nobody wants to
differently,
hear that.
things would.
Nobody wants to hear
They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that crap. They don't want to hear that. So, and that's what I would tell any elected official, and especially people that look like me. What I've said to other mayors, you know, don't get frustrated when they come and you figure, and you say, if things had voted, if the outcome of the election had been different, it couldn't. No, they don't want to hear that.
Right.
They don't want to hear that, because we're in these seats, and especially for African American mayors. When African Americans become mayors, the people who voted for them, who placed their trust in them, they want us to solve the problems right now.
They want results.
But look, they may have given another white mayor a longer time. But when we come
expectations is different.
Their expectations are higher. They expect you to understand their condition, why their conditions have been like this for a long time, and they want results, and they want them sooner. So they don't give us much of a runway. They don't do that. And instead of getting frustrated with them, we have to understand, and we have to find ways. And that's why I chose to stay in the same neighborhood. I was at the gas station. I had my mayor's detail, but I was on Saturday, and I wanted to drive my own car. I wanted to drive my own truck. So I got in my truck, didn't have enough gas in it, so I went to the local gas station, and I was pumping my gas. And this guy was walking towards me. I saw him walking, and I put my hand, one hand was on the gas pump, my other hand was in my pocket, and I act like I had something, because, so he was walking slowly, and he walked past me, and then he stopped and turned back to me. So I really put my hand in my pocket like I had a weapon or something, And I said, damn, where's my detail now, So he comes up to me, and he said, hey, well, what's your name, man? So I said, why you asking me my name? So he said, no, what's your name? He said, you look like the mayor. So I said, man, hell, I am the mayor. I am the mayor. You know what he said to me? He said, why are you in this neighborhood? I said, man, I grew up right down the street. He said, well, I know you, the mayor grew up in Eggleston, but I thought you'd be living someplace else. So I said, no, man, I'm still living right here. And then he says to me, much respect. Like Brother Gray, he pumped me, and he said, much respect, brother. And he walked away. And I said to myself, that's why it's important for us as leaders to find ways to still show our connectiveness to the communities that we serve, not just in words, but people want to see in a very personal, tangible way our connectiveness to the communities that we are seeking to represent. And then they'll give us a little more time in order to make the changes. So we've got to find ways to buy just a little more time. So when things do happen, and shit happens like, Tyree and others, then they'll be willing, when we say, look, we're trying to work it out.
They understand the truth.
Yeah. So those are the things that for me that I reflect on, and it's not just what you say, it's what you do, it's where you live. All of those things are important. They want to be able to touch you, feel you, look in your eyes, And when they look into your eyes, they'll know whether or not you care. They'll know, and especially in this case, brothers will know.
Oh yeah.
They'll know whether or not you talking just to be talking or you care.
Well, he's the man, and he is the man. Sylvester Turner has been on the couch with us. And I want to thank you for joining us for Black Brilliance Conversations on the Charles Coleman podcast. You know,
Thanks, man.
you are all right for our alpha, brother. I appreciate you having been on. Thank you so much for your time and for your work and for your effort. We really do appreciate you. And it is an honor and a pleasure to have had you on the Charles Coleman podcast.